Welcome, everyone, to RYSK, or Roguelikes You Should Know. This is our very first premiere, kickoff, launch episode thing, and I'm so glad that you're tuning in. We're going to be talking all about all kinds of things, roguelikes, all kinds of things, new releases, all kinds of things, early access. I'm Skip, and with me is Scott. Scott, how are you doing? Can you tell people a little bit, why should they listen? Why should people listen to me, or what are we going to be talking about? What are we going to be talking about? Could you let the good people know?
You're starting out deep, and I like it. You're not wasting the people's time, because that's really what we're about. We want to be the scientists in the lab, studying the new games, studying the weird games, going through the huge library of indie games, and discussing the ones you should know. Maybe not necessarily the ones you should buy. Maybe not all the ones you should necessarily try.
There's a lot of crap out there.
There's a lot of crap out there, and what we do is we sift. We sift.
Well,
we shift.
I mean, maybe a little bit of all of the everything.
Yeah. We pan for gold. We pan for gold, so you don't have to.
And it's roguelikes, it's roguelites, it's rogue adjacents, it's rogue nearbys. I think, and I know at some point we're going to talk. What about the definitions of all these roguelike things? I just want to say I don't want to talk about that right out of the gate because
all right.
I feel like that conversation, while necessary, is not the most fun conversation to listen to at times.
And I love playing a lot of different video games, and I like figuring out what I like. The credibility has to be established on what our standards are for a roguelike. So without getting into what that is, RYSK, Roguelikes You Should Know, first came up as a series of co-streams that you and I did together, where we kind of reviewed the roguelikes, but we really just kind of wanted to have a list of great games that fit into this genre. The greats need to be recognized for what they are, celebrated, supported, and they need to be resoundingly known. But they stand on a lot of the ashes of a lot of other games that could not make it as far as they did.
Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying there. I mean, but I would say, As you and I were thinking about this, as we were going through and figuring out what to talk about, it would be kind of boring for most people who would find this podcast series if all we talked about was the games they already knew. More than likely, if you are listening to or watching, depending upon which visual or auditory stimuli you're going for, if you found this podcast, more than likely you already know about The Binding of Isaac and probably Enter the Gungeon. And probably a few of the other, greats, probably Spelunky as well. I mean, you probably already know about those.
I guess so. Yeah.
I definitely think we're going to probably be mentioning one or more of the greats, so to speak, during every episode as a point of comparison. Because frankly, those games sort of defined the genre. Again, not getting into that definition thing. The Binding of Isaac did more for the adoption and success of the genre at large than almost any other game out there. And so, of course, we're going to talk about it. But it's not going to be the game that we're going to talk about. There's the joy of just talking about this stuff. I mean, I think, how long did you and I talk before we realized we should just start recording tonight?
Right. Yeah, and what we were going to talk about, because we started saying, all right, before we get into game number one, let's talk about the elephant in the room. And you know what, we should just record this. And you know what, this is just kind of let this be the thing. It can be structured, the infrastructure, our context as gamers, and when we're talking about them, it kind of orbits around what our favorite games are. It can't help but always be around roguelikes. I mean, there's some people who just want more and more deeper and more complicated RPGs with different types of inventory system. There's people who are all about the shooters.
I don't understand those people. I'm just going to put that out there. I don't. I've tried. Everyone is always giving me new RPGs that I got to play because they know I'm into indie games. There's some new indie RPG game coming out that's just a stand-in-line slap fest, like take turns slapping each other. I don't I can't do it.
There's
I
the
can't do
evolutions
it.
getting a little closer to our indie family. There's evolutions of the crafting and just kind of
the open sandbox type of
sure,
games.
yes, and survivals and simulators where we're gardening and we're doing house flipping and murdering and running businesses and
I like how house flipping and businesses had as a middle point murder in that sentence there. You're going to flip houses, you're going to maybe do some gardening, and in the middle between those two, maybe some murder.
Maybe not murder. It's murder adjacent. It's something. I think there might be some light murder in that game. Skip, can we be honest? There's light murder in most of the games we play.
There's outright murder in most of the games that we play. I mean, come on. So from a credential perspective, though.
Point to the thing on the wall. Why you should listen to me.
What are your roguelike credentials? Now, you don't have to necessarily say, well, I've mastered this game, but like, what's your go-to? What got you into hanging around Rogue HQ and people like me who obsess over the genre?
Oh, man. I gotta have to just... It's kind of lame to instantly go to hours played with this game in particular.
It's a stat you can't argue with. Generally speaking, it's a stat you can't really argue with.
The tip top of my pyramid is Binding of Isaac, Rebirth, 919 hours right now.
I told you that was going to come up.
Kind of as a close second is Slay the Spire at 890 hours.
Ooh, that's respectable hours in Slay the Spire.
Into the Gungeon at 199 and Monster Train at 194. So those are kind of like my action rogue pairing up pretty nicely with my turn-based strategy roguelike.
Your deck builders and your bullet hells, effectively.
My deck builders and my bullet hells.
So not talking about the elephant in the room we'll get to shortly.
Sure.
What game would you say is not maybe on that list that you would say this most represents a game in the genre that I love? That might not be top hours, but that you would go to.
Yeah, one that kind of appreciates my perspective and what I like and the fun I like to have and the vibe, something that bit me early on that I think I liked more than anybody else who played it, and I wasn't necessarily good at it. It's a game called Nuclear Throne. I played it as I was playing Binding of Isaac and looking for other games that were like Binding of Isaac. Mm-hmm. It drew me into a whole bunch of other indie games and fast-paced action indie games. But I don't stretch too far into other action games like that. I love turn-based. I love having a game on in the background while I'm doing work or I'm hanging out with the kids, family, have TV on, something. But I don't know, the aesthetic, the style, the zaniness, the speed of that game, it had no apologies for being rough around the edges and just throwing you into the deep end. Really super fun game.
I'm with you on Nuclear Throne, and I don't know if you knew this, but I mean, a lot of the criticism that game gets is the fact that it's developed in 480p. Like it's a 480i. It's a very low resolution game.
Absolutely.
And there's been mods that people have done to improve it, and people have asked the developers if they intend on improving the game, and they've actually answered, no, we actually part of the intent of the game was to have it look rough around the edges on purpose. So cleaning it up to them is not the way the game's supposed to be played. It's supposed to be at 30 frames per second, not 60 frames per second. Like, it's intentionally crappy, which kind of works from a visual perspective. And I don't say that about most games.
$15, $12 online, wherever you can find it. And
it's always on sale during any of the seasonal sales, too.
Yeah.
So you can
find it for $1.50. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's, I would say, a roguelike you should know. If you like action roguelikes, if you like what I think mostly people are thinking of roguelikes these days, because the elephant in the room... Oh, nope, we won't. They already know, but let's get to your skip before, if we do that...
The Binding of Isaac is very high for me as well. On Steam, I only have 160 hours. I also own the game on PlayStation. I also own the game on Nintendo 3DS and on Xbox. I don't know why. I like... Maybe part of me is when I find a game I like, I kind of want to support the developers, and I want to be able to play it on as many places as I can.
Totally fair.
So
totally fair.
My top game actually on Steam at 456 hours would be Slay the Spire. So that one huge for me. Into the Breach, a little over 250 just on Steam. I've also played that one on Switch significantly as well. Dead Cells, obviously.
Dead Cells.
I've played a lot more Dead Cells on console than I have on Steam. I have 150 hours on Steam, but that's not my top save file. So that one, Crypt of the Necrodancer, is also up there of one of my favorite games of all time.
Absolutely.
So I'd say those 5 games are probably, for me, the genre-defining hooks that keep coming back to me.
So of those that we would say are starting deck and the games we played, we both share Binding of Isaac and Slay the Spire.
Yep.
Good. 2 very different games.
Yeah. It's true. You couldn't get almost more different, honestly. But they're so well done, you know? Hard for me to think if there's another game. You know what? The other game for me, I would have picked another one. But I'm going to go ahead and address the elephant in the room. The episode of the hour. The game of the episode that is this hour, if I can say it correctly. Of course, is Hades, which we can't not talk about. It's new release, amazing, Supergiant Games doing what they do best around story and art and music. That game for me became one that was, I picked it up the first day it was released in early access on the Epic Game Store. It was brutal, very rough around the edges. I played it spot on during development on and off. When it came out as a full release, what it did, it decided, hey, we're going to have the fact that in roguelikes you die, have it be a part of the game and part of the story in a way that's so seamless and doesn't tear you out of it. A way that you go from, I'm going to play 1 run to, I've played 4 runs and it's 3 a.m. now. Uh-oh. That game for me is in the list of my top games of all time, has popped up there in the top 5 easily. Time will tell where it finally lands. It's too new to say definitively where it's at, but it's definitely in the top 5.
I agree. It has monopolized my game time, especially recently. I could not control myself, and I had to do another turn. 1 more turn. 1 more room. 1 more run, Skip. 1 more run. You go into reptile brain. Do you understand? It lulls your brain into thinking that this is good for you in Zen. There might be some things that does, but it's just pure, unadulterated fun.
Do you know how they do that though? How they do that is it's brilliant, because you're doing the run part of the game of Hades. You're going through fighting everything. Then whether you die or you win your run, right? You're now back in the house of Hades. And you're thinking, oh, well, I need to do all the in-between stuff. All the talking to characters.
Very much like WoW. Very much like WoW in that way.
Yeah. But you're thinking, oh, but I'm not doing another run. I just need to go through, and I can't not talk to these characters and progress the lore of the game. But then you get something, you get through the lore, and you go, well, that lore is going to change my next run. I can't not do my next run now. Right. You do your next run. Then you're back in the house of Hades, and you go, well, I can't not talk to everybody.
Yep.
It's like if you give a mouse a cookie.
It's definitely a give a mouse a cookie, Skip. It's the cookie. The permadeath nature of a roguelike is every run, while it could be a unique snowflake, is to various degrees independent from its fellow snowflakes.
That's exactly my point, is that a lot of these roguelikes really haven't thought about, well, let's think about the character as an ongoing, continuing through all of the runs they would possibly do.
Right.
And very few games, like Dead Cells has tried to do that, succeeded relatively well, but even then it feels a little bit disconnected, even though there's the whole, you're dead already, and you're just, there's a whole timeline thing going on there. Into the Breach has got these like time rift things where they're going back and saving other timelines. Right. I feel like every game that does it, though, it's some form of time travel magic where I go, it's an overused mechanic to make it try to feel seamless, you know?
Well, when we're talking about the way they try to squeeze the round peg in the square hole of story with a roguelike, the two that are always at my top are Binding of Isaac and Slay the Spire, right? For that context. Yeah. And what happens, win or lose, no matter what, I hate to say it, I hate to break it to you, you're already gotten this far, but you die.
Yeah.
At the end, to various degrees, or at least it's this idea of now you got to go do it again, and we don't even know if that was really real. The idea of eternity and deity being the background and the backdrop is shocking that a developer hasn't done it in this genre until now, until Hades. It still feels like, and they may have, and they may have.
And if someone has, it wasn't done well enough for us to find it, and I'm really glad nobody has, because Hades nails it, absolutely crushes it.
It's almost to me a shame, because I started a new, a fresh file for Hades after it came out at 1.0.
Oh, okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. I did the exact same. I said, nuts to all this early access. Let's get it fresh. Yep.
Right, because I think I had like maybe 30 or 40 runs in early access before 1.0,
okay. Yep.
and I played it really early on. I was like, oh, okay, this is good and hard. Really hard and really good.
It was really hard in early, especially early access before the boon synergies really were there. Yeah. Before there was really much you could do with the mirror. It was pretty much just early difficulty every single run. It was hard. Right, there's something very specific about the way they fine-tuned throughout early access, the way that enemies subtly telegraphed their attacks, which not a lot of games really get a good handle on that. I mean,
the gameplay itself is just... It feels like it was given as much thought as quick response rhythm games or fighting games or games that all they are action. Because you could not get away with mashing in early access.
No. Mm-mm. You still... I mean... You really can't now either. I mean, I watched people mash, and it ends in the third room.
Yeah, you gotta, if you mash smartly, you can do some mashing. I can set up a game for my 6-year-old to mash and do better than if I didn't set it up for him.
Yeah. Out of the gate, though, but that's you knowing the game and knowing how to set up a mash build. I mean, I've set up there are times literally, and that's part of what I love about it. There are times when I just want to kind of mash, and I'm like, you know what? I want to go through and just hit things at close range. Let's go pick up the gloves. Let's go grab some. Let's go grab some lightning, or let's grab some hangover on those gloves, and let's just go to town.
Sword, shield, and claws. Those are potential mashables. And then with the right boons on the dash, of course, I've figured out that like I'm hitting dash more than any other button.
I actually did a strictly dash build.
Interesting.
Once
I
didn't know it wasn't strictly dash. It was dash plus cast. So I put everything I could on coming to a room, casting, and then dashing around.
Yep.
And I never had to use my weapons. It was kind of memey by the end, and I think I had to resort to getting some attack boons by the end. But I think that's what I like. Like if you have an idea of a way that you want to play, you can for the most part manipulate it to give you kind of a different way of playing the game, which is, I think that's for me what brings it a little bit above the Binding of Isaac. Because the Binding of Isaac, you really had to just play whatever the game gave you.
Play the cards you're dealt. Play the cards you're dealt. And then quickly reset if you didn't get what you like. Oh. And then the whole game is kind of based on resetting to then kind of structure a sort of build and look for the happy accidents.
Exactly. I mean, if let's say you got something going on where your tears are bouncing off the walls and stuff, and you see, sacrificial dagger, it's like, oh, well... No, not mom's knife. The one that shoots straight out, not the one that orbits you. And you're like, well, great. All my synergies will be gone if I pick this up. But if I don't pick this up, this is also a good win. So you definitely found yourself resetting a lot. I think I've only reset Hades a run on Hades 3 times, and I've got over 70 runs after version 1 dropped. There's
been a couple times I'm with you where I thought to myself, oh, I might resell. This is going to be a throwaway run, right? And then I'm like, oh, what am I doing still in Styx? What? I'm actually getting to past Cerebus here. What in the world? Like.
I had a run. I thought it was a throwaway run, so I started just spending all of my currency on
sure.
darkness and
Yes.
gems.
Yes.
And it was one of my most overpowered Hades fights of all time.
Wow.
It's just you don't. That's the thing. It still, while it still has the I can do a build I want, it still can take you in predictable ways. You get a specific duo boon you hadn't realized was available to you at the time, or the game throws a legendary at you, or you get a Daedalus hammer that just changes the way your attack works, that synergizes with the boons that you thought were worthless before. You never know, and that's part of the fun of it too.
The game you're playing at this moment in time matters. Then, as the game develops, you have the little companions. How many times you use them in the run? How many times you use them in the encounter? Additional resources that they throw at you. Additional good things.
I guess that leads to a question that I have for you, Scott. I'd love to get your take on this, because
Please.
Let's look at what happened actually with Slay the Spire. Right, Slay the Spire dropped in early. Slay the Spire technically only came out in 2019, but by the time it dropped, it was already a major success. It got huge traction early access. It dropped into early access a complete game except for some minor balancing and the third character, and then eventually the fourth character. But that entire time, even before the third character dropped, it was already ridiculous success. Think of deck builders before Slay the Spire. You had Cards of Cthulhu. You had
wow, that's yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what did you have for deck builders, really?
I played on mobile, the mobile version of Ascension. I played Magic. I played Hearthstone.
Okay, yeah, not in the roguelike genre. Yeah, of course,
Sure, of course.
Hearthstone and Magic and stuff like that. Yeah. But it really hadn't made its way into much into the indie game genre, even outside of roguelikes. Not very much. Yeah. Look at the games that came out in 2020. Mm-hmm. How many games are a deck builder? How many roguelike deck builders are there? How many action... I've seen real-time action deck builders now, which is I mean, it kind of works sometimes it doesn't. But how many deck builders are there now because of Slay the Spire saying, here's a great way to make this fantastic indie game roguelike? And I mean, Monster Train you talked about, amazing game as well. Monster Train's actually what took me off of my Slay the Spire kick every day for a while.
Absolutely. Me too.
But I don't think Monster Train took a deck builder in a little bit different way. It wasn't just a Slay the Spire clone. There are tons of Slay the Spire clones out there. They're all pretty terrible because they're all just trying to be Slay the Spire.
Slay the Spire does it better, yeah.
So the question is Hades going to be a turning point for developers saying, ooh, we got to do it more like Hades? And if so, what elements do you think they're going to... What are the important elements they're going to pull?
Man, I don't know how the market's going to respond, because we've needed something like this to be more approachable than Binding of Isaac. There's so many people I know that, whether it's the art, the weird story, the pixel, there's too many turnoffs in general.
I know a lot of people that love the game, but they won't play it because of the dark motif of the game. It's very valid. It's not a bright, happy game.
Roguelikes are kind of about death.
But there's happy death.
Yeah, and Hades.
Swords.
Hades is the embodiment, the deification of death. He's the god of death. That's what it is.
He's Lord of the Underworld. You people do die, and he's Lord of the Underworld. He's not killing people. He's
managing the infrastructure. Yeah, I tell you what, there's lifetimes of poets and authors telling endless stories in this setting of Greek mythology. There's a reason why it has captivated Western, the language of Latin and Western civilization, and it being a basis for so many endless stories, because it's just so rich.
It is. Yeah. No arguments there.
I'm glad in some ways I'm old enough to have had narratives set in Greek mythology before the Disneyification of Heracles, or whatever it did. And in that setting, there's a Hades. There's the James Woods that is a classic villain. Man.
The James Wood Hades.
James Wood's Hades.
Very different. Very different in this game.
Very different. Very fun. A much richer character. A much more reflective of the medium and the stories had it, where he's just this kind of loyal, suffering, isolated character.
And I can't help but notice that while you've gone off on this tangent, you've completely dodged my question.
Probably.
Yeah. Which is totally fine.
What was your
But the people want to know. Okay.
Well,
Can you remember, or do I have to do you need me to ask it again?
Yeah, ask me again.
I'll ask it again. Are we gonna have Hades clones? I mean, is that where you're getting to with the Greek mythology? Maybe.
Would you say that there was a ton of Binding of Isaac clones? Or you're saying there was a ton of Slay the Spire clones? Was your initial premise?
Tons of Spire clones. Bullet Hells already had existed, I think, and so not really. So maybe your answer through that question is not really, because it's not like they were trying to create a new genre. They were just taking the genre in a different direction.
Yeah, they distilled Nuclear Throne, Enter the Gungeon, because it doesn't feel like the dual stick Binding of Isaac.
It's more like the Wizard of Legend.
Right.
It's like the Wizard of Legend without pits that you fall into all the time. Let's be honest. Which is the only reason why I can't play that game. Total side note that we might get into someday. Why does that game have pits in it? It's kind of like Undermine. Why are there pits here? And why are the pits making me hate this game? It's like they took Wizard of Legends control mapping and said, we can make a game people actually enjoy playing instead of regretting their choices. Too harsh?
No, not harsh enough.
Okay, yeah. All right. Don't play that game. There we go. Don't play that game. Harsh.
I'm too busy enjoying Hades to think about how people are going to try and make crappier versions of it. Because frankly, one of the best story experiences of my favorite medium, it's so rare to get one that is so much fun to play and the story is so riveting. And I told coworkers when they talk about, that one doesn't have a good enough story or whatever in a video game, I always tell them, snap out of it. You're playing a video game. The story is so tertiary.
Well, now, I mean, I will, for the sake of argument, point out that as you and I really love sort of the rogue adjacent games, people don't really get into these games because they tend to like the story, etc. But there are a whole subset of video game players out there that the story is specifically what they live for.
It's primary. It's primary.
And that's primary for a lot of people. Is the story?
Look, whenever I come across a game that costs around $20 and I end up spending 80, 90 hours, then I am pleased as punch. Like that is amazing. Hades is going to be even more, right? Even more than the 90 hours I've already put up on it. I love discovering games that I find infinitely more fun than a $60, $70, $80 brand new AAA game that maxes out all of my specs, but doesn't really add anything new to the game theory table or add anything new to the genre other than maxing out that latest generation specs.
I'm with you there. I much prefer the game that gives me something unique to the play rather than, look at the great graphics. I'm with you there. And maybe it's a question for you, but I'll answer for myself first. When I get done with the game, it might not even be because I reached the end of the game. It's because I've reached the point where I feel like I've accomplished something. Like Slay the Spire. I never got to Ascension 20. I know some people in this room might have gotten there. I got Ascension 20 with the Ironclad. I'm happy with that, but that's just the point. Right. I reached a point where I'm like, you know what? I have gotten to the point where I feel like I've improved on how I play the game. I get the strategy of the game, and I have gotten better in the best possible
And the game has presented an off-ramp for me that I've taken.
Yeah, exactly. And the game has said, hey, come and try and beat this. And I'm like, hey, I can beat this game now. Maybe I can't beat every single difficulty level. I've beaten this game in ways I never thought I could. I've grown, I've achieved. And then I feel like, yes, this game has been worth it. And the fact that that game often came with the price tag of $10 to $15 is brilliant compared to paying $60 for a game that when you reach the end of the game is just you spent long enough hitting things over and over again that your stats went up. I don't find that as satisfying, personally.
Well, I kind of view it as the people who are looking for the Metal Gear Solid cutscene movie-like experience, then a puzzle or two, and then maybe the illusion of choice here or there.
Illusion of choice. Total topic for a future. Illusion of choice in video games. Oh my goodness.
That being the product, that being the thing that you're choosing to take your time, and the book you're reading, right, that's being spoon-fed to you, as opposed to this is a system that you or anyone else can enter into, and you are then writing the book or the magazine or just the quick little short story on this session of play. You are determining what trinket you're starting with so you get the first boom.
Yeah, you're creating your own thing while defeating the thing that was created for you, kind of.
Right, and you're getting hit with RNG problems and RNG solutions, and you're having to be creative in solving these issues, and the strategy is the puzzle.
Yep. I want my success to be victory over RNG, not perfect muscle memory. I just
right.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Some people obviously do amazing at, especially like speed running, say, a Mario game. It's great. It's muscle memory though. It is. It's perfecting that muscle memory. It's impressive. Don't get me wrong. It's ridiculously impressive. It's just not what I look for in a game. I don't want to I want to react to something thrown at me.
This is where the winds are turning, is that more and more people are going to... There's going to be a lot of people, their very first roguelike is hating. Their very first roguelike is hating. And that's very exciting. Because the music alone, the soundtrack alone...
Okay.
...is one of the best soundtracks, Skip. One of the best stories. One of the best action. It's the best... It's the best roguelike I've ever played, and I'm one of the most hardcore fanboys. It's a must-buy, Skip,
yep.
And I'm excited about it.
For those of you who are not familiar with Supergiant games, you're not familiar with Darren Korb's work, Supergiant also put out Bastion, Transistor, and Pyre as well. Mm-hmm. Yep. Bastion and Transistor, great voice acting, great stories. It's like the thing that Supergiant does, and they just applied it to a roguelike this time, which... I'm not surprised they succeeded so well. But the music. So Darren Korb, he's a genius. He has the ability to take whatever mood, whatever they're going for, and composing the music to fit the game, but not to be ordinary in any way. Not to be the point where when you hear it for the third time, you're bored of it. It always fits the game. Bastion was sort of this almost Wild West yet dystopian, and he did Wild West dystopian better than anyone I've ever heard. Transistor was a little bit more on the tech side, and so it had sort of that tech, that electronic music feel to it. Hades, you think of, it's got the roguelike, it's got the death, but it's got Olympic mythology mixed into everything. And then you've got the songs that specifically pertain to certain characters as well tied into that, and story and lore woven into the music of the game that goes beyond the end credits of the game as well. It's a masterpiece, and I would say absolutely. I mean, every one of his games I separately purchase the soundtrack, even though I can listen to it for free. That much so that I want to be able to support what's being put out. I can't speak enough of, even if you don't like roguelikes, if you appreciate excellent music in video games, just go listen to the soundtrack.
I care about the musician NPCs in this game like I would if back in the day I was caring as much in the MMORPG I was into, or maybe Skyrim or something like that. I might care about a musician getting to kind of hear, but nothing like this. Nothing where I feel like I've got a stake.
It breaks your heart.
So yeah, because here's the deal. That's music. The art
Oh,
is some of the best art in gaming.
it's amazing.
It gives you a much better understanding of the place setting for stories throughout mythology.
So all in all, if we're gonna put a capper on this,
I don't want to.
I know all good things, but if we're gonna put a capper on this, and something that we're gonna do in every episode, we're not necessarily gonna give each game a rating, but we're gonna give the recommendation, so to speak, in whatever way you want to do it.
Oh my
so
gosh.
it might be this is a game that's worth picking up if you've got an extra $5. Would be a way of describing a game. You could have on the other end of the spectrum, this is a game that you should tell Steam to hide from you and stop recommending. Would be another way of describing a game. Or it should be, you should buy this game on every console that you have. Buy copies of it for your friends and family. So on your own scale, how would you describe Hades?
Give them money. Give them a lot of money. Just buy the game. Avoid the sales so you can make sure you buy it full price. This game needs to be supported. I want there to be dailies. I want there to be more ways to compare runs. I want there to be variations on hell mode, variations on more. I haven't felt like this in terms of being able to throw a game out there, start an experience. It really hasn't been since Civilization and seeing a black map and then deciding which direction I want to run into, and then seeing the game slowly reveal to me what my evening is going to be like, what my session is going to be like. I haven't been looking forward to a new session of gaming like this in a few years. So Skip,
Yes.
I did rate it as a must buy. Turn your brain off. Give them all of your money and invest in the publisher. What about you? How does it stack up to the competition, to the marketplace?
Okay, how would I put this?
How do you put it?
And I don't want to sound like I'm just copying you.
Uh-oh.
But if that tells you,
Uh-oh.
I would definitely say, buy it for every system you have. Buy out the merch store. Wear the thing you love. That's where I'm at. Like, literally, like, it's that good for me that I've gone. And when you buy the merch, okay. Oh, here we go. Buy the merch from the developer to make sure that the developer, but from Supergiant, buy copies for all your friends and on all your consoles at full price. That's my rating of this game, 100%.
Yeah. It's interesting to start this whole thing out with such a great, unavoidable game. I mean, IGN, 9 out of 10. Destructoid, 9 out of 10.
It's going to be Game of the Year. It's got to be Game of the Year for something. I got to think. It's getting so much rating.
I don't even care. I think this is a game that could really introduce a lot of people to why gaming is what I do. I can't recommend anything higher, and that's one of the reasons why it was the elephant in the room.
We had to.
Couldn't.
We had to.
Yeah, especially we're planning on talking about other action roguelikes. So we just knew we would descend into...
We would at some point
Hades.
be talking about this game and going, why didn't we talk about this game?
So
it's
that's
just,
what
we had to.
Right.
We had to. Our next episode is going to be on a game in early access right now, so it's not fully released. A game called Skul, the Hero Slayer. Fantastic little game. That's what we're going to be talking about next. We'll be talking about that game in the next episode.
More people might care about our thoughts on that because, Hades is in all the websites and magazines and streams and everything.
But I still think people might want to go, well, what other games are out there? There's a lot.
There's a lot. And we've played a lot of roguelikes, and we've played a lot of bad ones, and we've played a lot of games that people call roguelikes that aren't. And I've actually played a couple of games that people aren't calling roguelikes that are. And the community needs to know about those as well.
We do, absolutely. So that's the one we'll be dropping. We're going to be doing episodes every 2 weeks. If you're listening to us as a audio podcast, you can also find us on the YouTubes If you see us on the YouTubes and you want to have us as just an audio podcast, you can find us anywhere that you get your podcasts. Well, I've been Skip. Scott, thanks so much for being Scott.
I'm Scott. You're Skip.
Yep. And yep, that was awkward. But, I appreciate the awkward. I appreciate it. So, anyways, as a spoiler, as the teaser, not the spoiler, as the teaser for everyone, there's already a disagreement coming up in some of the next episodes.
I think so.
We've already got some disagreements. So,
right.
it'll be interesting.
Yeah. This was our sanity check. Yes, we both have great taste. And moving forward.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll see you next time.
See you next time, guys.